This is your place for all things Grand Rapids Griffins and all things Toledo Walleye. This is the Hockeytown West podcast with your host, Brandon Cook, Nick Harrington, and Travis Foch.
So you know what my favorite thing about this past week's been? That's one of them. It's Dylan Larkin getting the respect he deserves in hockey media finally. Have you seen this all this week? We obviously Wings fans have known, but now you're seeing everyone be like, wow, Larkin's a pretty good player. Yeah, no duh. We all knew that. But this is great. I'm loving this for him. Like all the positive stuff of everyone saying of him going in being like, yeah, I'm happy to be on the team, play the fourth line role, whatever I've got to do. Scores the game winner on Saturday. Beautiful goal. And now everyone's talking about him. Like it's so well deserved.
Is there somebody in the house that's officially on board with Larkin now?
Yeah, Nick has been not on the Larkin train, I should say.
So did everybody know?
Does Nick finally know?
He still doesn't believe, folks.
I don't know if I want to answer this right now.
Yeah,
Next question.
The comment section will be ruthless on him.
I mean, did you see that? I did tweet out yesterday. I said, "Is it time?" And I was like, "If he scores another, I might have to pull the trigger and get a USA one, a USA jersey."
It would be a good one to have in the collection, especially with how he's played in this tournament. But this Four Nations thing overall has just been an absolute blast. Like the NHL knocked this out of the park.
It was good timing for once. Like they actually scheduled something correctly. Like when they did the 32 games and all 32 teams in one night kind of thing, that was chaotic and crazy, and it didn't really work the two times that they did it. But they scheduled it during the All-Star break. They scheduled it after the NFL season. They scheduled it during the NBA break, and I feel like this was like, hey, hockey's back, and after the first 9 seconds of the last game, everybody's like, hey, like. It gained a lot of searches. It gained a lot of popularity. I'm hoping this is will catapult them back onto the main stage again.
I have never had so many people text me about hockey than I had in the first 9 seconds of that U.S.-Canada game. Like my phone, and my friends, a lot of it is people from high school that watched basketball, played basketball, religious basketball people. And they're like, oh my God, what is happening? And I'm like, welcome to hockey.
It's so good. It's so good. And that's my favorite thing too, is you watch all these sports shows throughout the day on ESPN and they all just talk about basketball. Hockey will make its way in there occasionally. Then they still talk about football for the next few hours. Then you just see people going the NHL dunked on the NBA All-Star game with this whole setup. It's so well executed. I do not like the championship game being on a Thursday night. That drives me insane. But at the same time, I get it with scheduling and other things. And obviously the season has to get back underway at some point in time.
But still a standalone. It's still standalone. And that I think is the biggest thing. That's going to get a lot of people watching it. I'm interested to see if I think it was 4.4 million people watched that game. I wonder if they break that Thursday night.
Well, the other thing that helps it too is that it was accessible, right? How hard was it to find these games? It really wasn't. And even the President's Day, I had to work, so I wasn't tuned in at home like most people had the day off. And there was a game on at 2:00. I completely forgot, but that's brilliant. Yes, people are home, people are sitting around. The weather was pretty nasty here at Grand Rapids. People are gonna sit around, they're gonna watch TV. It was a good matchup on Monday between the two teams, and I mean it was still caught a lot of views. I mean, and that just led up to the afternoon game for the evening.
Yeah, it's just well done.
Can I
well
throw
done by
something
the
out
NHL.
there real quick before we move on?
Yeah.
I want to say this, and I sent my dad this text. I think Prime USA versus Canada best on best hockey is the best hockey you're ever going to watch.
Yeah. Obviously.
And I said this too, even better than most Stanley Cup finals. Because if you think about it, Just think about it, and here I'll make the argument, and then you can rebuttal. When you get to the Cup final, most years the teams are so beat up that very seldomly do you get 7-game Cup finals anymore. And when you take all of this talent and put it on one sheet of ice, that was one of the fastest games I've ever watched. Unbelievable talent. You've seen everything in that game that you could see, and everybody did something. I feel like when you play an 82-game season and go on a 2-month playoff run, like, yeah, that's great, but let's be real. The Cup final's not even the best round of the playoffs. The first round is absolutely the best round of the playoffs.
Yeah.
And when you get the U.S. and Canada head-to-head, like, look at some of these games over the years. 2010 gold medal game, 2002 gold medal game, this game Saturday. You're going to have another instant classic Thursday. Like, they rank probably well within the top 15, 20 games ever played.
Yeah, I agree. It's exciting to see. And it's exciting to know that we have best on best hockey coming up too with the Olympics, and you got the World Cup of hockey coming back. Like, we're going to continue to see best on best, and it's great that the NHL has recognized that this is what the fans want to see. So I'm just excited for what the future years will look like here. I'm also excited to welcome you back to the Hockeytown West podcast, your source for everything Grand Rapids Griffins and Toledo Walleye hockey. I am one of your hosts, Brandon.
I'm Nick.
And I'm Travis.
That was supposed to be a shorter cold open than I wanted it to be, but hey, it's Four Nations and we had to talk about it, right? But this is a Grand Rapids Griffins and Toledo Walleye podcast. We're here to update you this week on the Grand Rapids Griffins. They had 3 games over this past week since we recorded last. We got to talk about they had an at-home battle against the Springfield Thunderbirds and then a quick road trip over to Iowa to take on the Wild Friday and Saturday. So we have a lot of hockey to talk about, and we're going to dive straight into it here. We're going to recap these games real quick, and then we have a few new segments of the show we're going to introduce as well as we move on through it. So game recap, let's start with Wednesday. Back here at Van Andel Arena, we ended up at the arena a little early that afternoon too, Nick. You know, we do have day jobs. Unfortunately, we can't do the podcast full time. And with what we do with the Griffins, we're allowed to go to practice. We don't get to go to as many as we want to because of our said day jobs. But Springfield came into town. A former player for the Grand Rapids Griffins was also coming into town. We had to go to practice that morning and have a few words with him that morning. So we got to go talk to Matt Luff, which was fantastic. That dude's just pure vibes. Like, that's all he is. On the ice during practice and in the interview, just vibes. But that was a lot of fun to catch up with him, wasn't it?
It was, and he's having a great season this year too. I think he's second on the team with goals and points.
Yeah.
Dvorsky's killing it. But when we talked to Ryan, the PR guy for Springfield, he was telling us too that ever since Luff joined the team, they've went on this crazy streak, and it's really helped elevated the team. So fitting in, doing well. And it was a pleasure to chat with after the game, and I think we've posted it in a couple different spots for you to be able to check that out.
Yeah, it's posted everywhere on wherever you can find our stuff.
Do you think he could have helped GR this year?
I mean, let's not assume that. I don't know. It's tough to say. The one thing I'll say, I'm thankful for him in that one, because he at the time we did that interview, he was 1 point shy of tying his career high. And we joked to him, like, can you not get that point tonight against us? And he did not. So thanks, Luffer, for not getting a point that night. Not that it really mattered, because we'll jump into the game now, and the Grand Rapids Griffins lost this one 4-1. And I want to preface this with saying the score sheet does not reflect this game. Mind you, Springfield at the beginning of the season they were in rough shape, and like we said, Luff came in. Things have turned around for them. They're a pretty good team in a really, really tough division, and as their PR guy told us, their forward lineup, it's just not even fair. And when you look at it on paper, yeah, it's really not. And you go into this game, Springfield does score the first goal of the game 11 minutes in. 4 minutes later, though, the Griffins do respond. Gabriel Seeger, another net front presence by him, cleaning up a rebound and getting the goal with Hunter Johannes and Antti Tuomisto assisting on that. And it's a tie game after the first. And the Griffins, I felt like, looked like a different team for what we talked about last episode, where we were just so down based on the results. You know, those 3 shutouts in there, just terrible time for us. After that first period, I think you and I both looked at each other, Nick, and we're like, they look better.
They did. They looked better. They came out the first period. They outshot both periods for Grand Rapids. The first and second, they had 24 shots on net to their 14. So, they were controlling the offensive zone. They were controlling the defense. I told you, I said it's going to come down to either a bad break, a lucky bounce, or a bad call, or we're going to overtime. It's kind of where I felt. It was
And
such
a
a tight
bad
game.
call it was.
There was a lot of
And a
bad in this game.
A bad call it was. No goals in the second period, like Nick alluded to there. You to the third period, 15-minute, 20-second mark of the period, a goal that was a mile offsides. We saw it from the press box. Bob saw it from his point of view in the press box. The guys in the bench saw it in person. They knew it was offside. Linesman didn't see it, let it go. Springfield scores, and that was just the turning point of this game here. And with this, all we can say is the AHL needs to, and they must introduce challenges. Like, it's a must at this point. You have it in the NHL. Plays are reviewed significantly more frequently in the ECHL. In the AHL, they looked at that with a whole arena and the bench of guys all complaining and just said, play on. And when you look at the replay, the ref or the linesman's not even on the line to call it. He's about 5 feet into the Griffins zone and still doesn't think, yeah, maybe we should go back and look at that. Because what, Nick, I had the screenshot pulled from the replay before play even resumed on my iPad in the press box. If I can personally do that fast, there's no reason the league can't review a play like that. It's unacceptable. And for a team that's going through what they're going through, for Grand Rapids to have that happen and that be the turning points of this game, that was disgusting, like, to say the least.
Yeah, because the other two goals were just empty netters. Like, that goal being offsides just really deflated the team. I mean, they're putting in the work, they're winning the battles, they're getting shots on net, they're outplaying Springfield, and just a bad call goes against them. I thought, you may have to correct me, but I thought Bob said on the broadcast for the next night is that they're working on something like this, but it's a league-wide thing, and they're trying to put the cameras in at the other arenas to be able to get these views or something.
Yeah, so what Bob had mentioned, because he interviewed Dan Watson before Friday's game, and they had mentioned that challenges are in the works, and hopefully it's something that over this summer they introduce. In Dan's words, not fast enough, clearly. And it's been stuff like this all season, though. I feel like every episode we're talking about one call. Like, you think of the goal in Milwaukee where Milwaukee pushed the pad of I think it was Kosa at the time, in net and pushed that goal in, which you can't do. And that wasn't challenged. That wasn't reviewed. And goals can be reviewed in the American League. We've seen refs review for goals before, and their decision just to go, no, we're not reviewing this. If you were in the seats anywhere in that arena, it doesn't matter what end you're on, you saw it was offsides. The guy was offsides by at least 5 feet. And no, we're just going to play on. And that's going to be the deciding factor of a 1-1 game with 5 minutes left. Just, yeah. There's words I want to describe it. I just can't use them on this show.
You know what's bad is when, look, I'm a big proponent for changing the determining edge for offside to the neutral zone side of the blue line. It's bad when it's so far offsides that even then it's still offsides.
Yeah.
And too, I remember the one game where they, I think me and you might have been either FaceTiming or we were texting or something, and I was like, dude, that was way offsides. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah, that was this season as well.
Yeah, but that one was a lot closer than this was, so I can understand that one. This one, that was bad. When you sent the picture, because I was working a long day at work, and I get the text I'm like, what happened in the third period? And you're like, well, they basically lost on an offside call. And I was like, how bad was it? And you sent the picture in the group match. I was like, oh my God.
It's just, now you brought up the other one too, and that just makes me more frustrated because I remember that one as well. And we're both like, yeah, that's offsides. And again, had the screenshot of the replay before play resumed. It's not hard to get. That's the thing. I know you want the camera down the line, but you don't necessarily need that, especially for ones that are this bad. And I just go back to my point, for the refs not even to take a look in a 1-1 game with 5 minutes left. It's disgusting, honestly. It's just bad. Bad officiating, and I feel like I'm starting to talk more and more about bad officiating as this stretch goes on, and that might just mean because we're on the losing side of it, but I try not to get on my officiating rants too much on this show. I'm known for them, so I'll move on from it unless you guys have any other points to add to this goal.
I I was surprised that Dan came out and said it right away at post game for the interview.
I loved it.
I was surprised because usually like when you watch like the NFL or NBA, like they get fined for stuff like that, and just how he said it, and he called it out. He's like, they were a mile and a half offsides, or I'm not sure the exact words, but so I was surprised that he called it out. But at the same point too, like you can't rely on the refs to turn the game. Like you've seen it, we've seen it. Like we've got to continue going through, and there was still 5 minutes left to be able to try to get a goal, to try to get a play. Like we went 0 for 3 on the power play. I mean, any of those we could have converted, and it would have been a little bit more on our way. So I hate blaming the refs because it's like still take it was blatantly offsides. Don't get me wrong. Like it was blatantly offsides, but we can't let that factor into the loss, I would say.
I think it's a huge factor in this loss, but that's just me. I know you
That's
say
a
the refs can't
big
control the game.
momentum
It's a
thing.
big
Control what you can
momentum
control,
swing.
right? Control what you can control. And you can't control the refs being blind to that, being a mile and a half offsides. Like you still got to put the puck in the net. You still got to save it. And I'll say this though too, is that first goal was terrible. Absolutely terrible goal to give up. So
Sure, it was, but like Trav just said too, rules are rules, and if you're playing the game to the rules, you got to kind of count on the rules to back you up while you're playing the game. It's yes, you can control what you can control, but you just hope that the game is at least called to the book. Like, yeah, sure, you're gonna miss a trip, you're gonna miss a hook, you're gonna miss a high stick. To miss an offsides that's that bad at that point in a tie game. Yes, sure, the Griffins could have scored more goals. Of course, that's the answer for every game. You could have scored more. But when you're outplaying an opponent the way they did, and let's be real, we ran into a goaltender that night that was making some unbelievable saves. I couldn't believe half the time the puck was staying out of the net, out of the Springfield net. But just that, like if that was a playoff game, you'd be screaming right now.
That's a series changer if it's a playoff game.
Exactly, 100%.
Now, I'll say this, too, about the challenging, because something came to my mind while you were talking about it. With offsides, now I just said a rule's a rule, but here's where there's a huge difference with this. And, again, this is where if you change the determining edge to offsides, you'd eliminate a lot of reviews. If you got to zoom in to, like, way, like, 100 times zoom in to tell if it's offsides, at that point, it's fine. It doesn't make that big of a difference. Now, if you're 3.5 feet offsides, that's where there's a big problem. And now I played hockey. I understand offsides is offsides. If you're offsides, you're offsides. But again, like if you're like an inch, not even an inch, and you like gotta slow it down to the slowest set, like frame by frame, and use multiple cameras to figure out if it's offside. I can understand that, but like when you're 3.5 feet in the zone, like that's bad. Yeah,
I'm actually I'm gonna put it into the show now, just because like I want to hit that point of where the linesman was.
It was
because
bad.
This is what drives me nuts, and I'll throw it on screen for the YouTube viewers. So here's the play from our Twitter page. Linesman's down here in front of the Griffins' door. Puck's on the blue line still, and here's homie skate with a ton of white space between, and we're not zoomed in at 100 times. There's a lot of ice here on the screen from the Flow Sports feed. And, like, come on. You're so far out of position if you're the linesman here. You're so far out. There's not a guy interfering. There's not a guy coming over the boards. He's just blatantly out of position.
Hey, shout out Randy on the right side of the screen here.
Oh, 100%. Great response to that one. It's so good. But anyways, it's just, yeah, we could talk about officiating, offsides, all that stuff for the rest of the episode. And I don't want to do that to the listeners here. But as
that is a wrong foxhole to take Brandon down.
It is 100%. But as we said, the Griffins lost this one 4-1, and Nick alluded to it. 0 for 3 on the power play. They did go 1 for 1 on the penalty kill, which was great. In this one, you had Jack Campbell getting the start, stopped 20 of 22. Ellis on the other end stopped 31 of 32. But out shooting them 32-24 was something we haven't seen much of. And like you said, Nick, 24 shots in the first two periods. It was a different look Griffins team from what we've seen the past couple nights, which made us really happy with where we went to some struggle games that were really, really painful to watch. And for it to end like that, yeah, it sucks. But I'm going to move on from that game unless you have final thoughts to add to the Springfield game.
I like the lineup that they did switch. They did get Danielson and Watson separated, so they put him with Mazur and Shine. I thought that worked. That line worked really well together. So call out there because that's something that we asked for the episode prior.
Yeah, it really is too.
And there was so.
And more production from the fourth line again.
Yeah.
Just continuing to score. Seider just parking it in front of the net and cleaning up the trash like he's been doing the past few games. So credit to that line for continuing to produce for the team when they need it. And yeah, I do agree. I like the lineup changes that night. And you go to Friday's game and the lineup was pretty similar to what we had been seeing prior to that game. And we were scratching our heads going, why? But before we dive into that, let's talk about the game because this is a Griffins win to talk about. Yes, I know those are getting rare to talk about in the show right now. So let's talk about a win. Griffins going to Iowa and walk out of here with a 4-3 overtime victory, and the scoring goes as followed. 9 minutes into the game, Joe Snively gets his 17th of the season from Nate Danielson and Carter Mazur. Iowa responds with 2 goals in the first there to take a 2-1 lead into the second period. Going to the second, 10 minutes, 40 seconds in, Hunter Johannes gets his first AHL goal, assisted by Alexander Doucette and Tori Dello. What a moment for Hunter. I was super pumped for him in that moment because he had been picked on all night by a guy from Iowa that I'm sure we're going to talk about here. Iowa does respond, though, to regain their lead. Hunter ends up responding. He gets back their 3-2 lead. Going to the third period, 5 minutes left. On the power play, Joe Snively with his 18th of the season from William Vollinder and Andre Becker. Go to overtime. Sheldon Dries ends up with the game winner, his 18th of the season. Now him and Snively tied for goals at this point in the season. And Snively gets the assist on that one, as well as Dominic Shine getting the assist. Grand Rapids outshoots Iowa 31-29. Like we said, the Griffins get 1 power play goal, but they had 8 opportunities in this game. 1 for 8 in this game. Penalty kill goes 3 for 4 in this one. In goal for the Griffins, you had Sebastian Koza stop 26 of 29 shots that he faced. So let's unpack this one a little bit. A power play goal happened.
That's good.
Cheers. The stadium erupts, right? We finally see one. But 1 for 8? Are you kidding me? Oh.
I mean, I think some of these two were kind of like they were in a minute and a half in and then they get a penalty. So, I mean,
that's true.
There was some of that. So, I don't think they had a true 8 chances that night. There was a little balance there, but
yeah, I did forget that part, so I'm glad you pointed that out. It's still not a great stat line, and I know we're going to talk about power play and special teams at the end of the episode here, but that's just, when you see it on the stat sheet 1 for 8, you go, that's not good. Let's just talk about the extracurriculars from this game, because you had a guy, I don't know his first name, I know his last name, Blatchman in Iowa. He was just recently called up from the East Coast League. And
the guy's a menace to society.
Nico, thank you, Nick. Nico Blatchman.
Do you need to know something about him?
You got a story about him?
So this dude, when he was in Iowa, into Toledo, just skating back and forth along the red line, just hollering at walleye guys.
That's funny you say that. He did that Saturday before the game in Iowa as well.
He just is there to be a pain. So I'm just going to say it. He's there to be a pain in the ass. That's all he's there to do. That's all he does in Iowa. That's all he does in Iowa, literally. I didn't realize that's who it was initially. And then I was like, you just said his name, and I'm like, oh, that's probably that guy. And then you said he was recalled from the ECHL. I was like, oh, well, yeah, that makes sense. That guy's a menace, yep.
It was a confusing weekend for us because we played Iowa and Toledo played with Iowa as well. So it was that Griffin Ness scored on for you guys, and Blatchman's over here fighting over here. So it was the whole timeline was chaotic for us. So
it really was. But yeah, Blatchman was doing his job, right? That's what he was there to do. He was trying to make a name for himself in the American League. Let's be real. He also put his team in vulnerable positions with some of his decision making. Not that the Griffins really capitalized on many of them, unfortunately. If this was a night where the power play was humming like it was at the beginning of the season, he probably wouldn't have seen the next night for the Iowa Wild. But here we are. We live in this timeline, unfortunately. I mean, you saw early in the game, which this kind of blew our minds here. Austin Watson makes kind of unavoidable contact with the Iowa goaltender. The guy was way out of the crease. He gets called for goalie interference. Iowa's captain goes and drops the gloves with him. Austin hadn't even dropped the gloves yet at this point when captain for Iowa's gloves came off, and Austin does decide to drop him. And if you listen to the show, we knew that Austin Watson had 9 fighting majors leading up to this, and a 10th one in the American League is a 1-game suspension. So immediately we thought, well, he's not playing Saturday. Spoiler alert, he played. Yeah, right. We're thinking Carson Bantle was going to get called up, but Austin Watson played. And the only thing we can assume, we don't know why, but we can assume that since Iowa's captain was called for instigating, that's a fight that doesn't count towards that, possibly. I don't know. Someone's going to have to let us know in the comments what the actual rule is until we find out what it is. But there's that. You also had that same captain in that sense getting a 10-minute misconduct for that instigating as well. So that all could have played into why Austin Watson wasn't suspended for Saturday's game. But then you also had Blatchman going after Hunter Johannes later in the game. Blatchman gets 2 for roughing, gets an unsportsmanlike, gets a game misconduct for being the aggressor in that situation because he kind of, I don't want to say jumped, but he kind of jumped Hunter, which is like the second time this season that's happened to Hunter. Poor guy. But Blatchman's giving him the business in the Griffins zone, and as they're skating towards center, Blatchman just drops the gloves, and Hunter wasn't even ready to go. And that all happened there. So a lot of extracurriculars in this game that was kind of like good to see the Griffins overcome and pull out a victory, because sometimes when these games get like this, teams go off the rails. And the Griffins stayed pretty disciplined overall. I mean, Iowa had only 4 power plays to the Griffins' 8. So the Griffins did a good job playing their game. Well, clearly there was some players on the other side trying to play a different game.
What sticks out to me is it's wildly funny that 2 guys named Hunter scored in this game.
Like almost back-to-back too, like 3 minutes apart.
Well, if you think about it, like you think of Hunter, Wild, you know, it's just kind of a...
Oh, geez. I see what you're doing there. Oh, God.
I'm being Nick right now.
Oh, I got 2 of them to deal with tonight.
I'm trying to, manifest that chaos that Nick provides the show and make this fun.
Just trying not to sound robotic, right, Travis?
Yeah, totally.
But any other final thoughts for this Friday game before we hit the ad break, boys?
No, not for me. Nick, you got anything?
It was good to see kind of like overall the team like scoring came from a couple different areas. Yes, Joe Snively and Sheldon Dry stepped up. That veteranship right there kind of pushed them over that hump, you could say, of kind of where we're at, where we've been the last few games. But then you also see Hunter who gets his first. You see Doucette get 1. You get Dello on the board too. So and Becker got back on the board as well. And then you saw Wallinder. So you saw kind of everybody kind of chipping in on this game and getting the points. And you see them you get 1 on the power play.
Yeah, ending that power play drought was huge. And it's funny, we've talked about it on the show before, how we have this mysterious power sometimes when we point something out, it's either fixed or someone scores after they've been on the show or get called up, for God's sakes. Look at Sebastian Cosa. He was here on the show and a week later gets called up. But we literally post on our social media the streak that the Griffins were on. It was like 0 for 28 or something like that in the power play, or 0 for 30. And 15 minutes later in real time, not game time, they scored 1. And right after I had posted that stat too, I had called out Becker with 2 terrible mistakes on the power play, and he gets the assist on it. And like, all right, well, thanks for making me eat my words, boys. You did it in the right way, so thanks. But it's just funny how the world works sometimes when we post that stuff, and immediately the universe solves itself.
0 for 23. And I made it a point throughout the broadcast too at that point, and we had to call it out, and
you have to.
You have to, and we'll be getting some more answers for our listeners and viewers this week, as well as we hope to find an answer here on this power play.
Yeah. Travis, any final thoughts from you?
Yeah, Nico Blackman or Blatchman, however you want to say it. 39 games with the Iowa Heartlanders, 173 penalty minutes this year.
I believe it.
He's just chaos. He's got anger issues.
I mean, he stacked up 30 in that game for himself?
He has 28 in 3 games with the Iowa Wild this year.
Jeez. I mean, yeah, he had 22 penalty minutes after 1 game against us. Like, I'm not surprised by that stat line at all.
Bob had mentioned he's been on like multiple ECHL teams throughout, 3 or 4 different teams. So Not really a surprise. And I started Google mapping how far away the arenas were because I thought Carson Banta was literally coming up.
Yeah, from the Iowa or from the Walleye playing in Iowa City. Yeah, that would have been kind of convenient if that worked out that way, I guess. It's still a good distance. What'd you say, 2 hours?
2.5, I think.
Yeah, but still, it would have been convenient at the time instead of getting on a plane. Would have been a cheaper process for the team if they needed to call him up. But I'm glad they didn't. Again, I don't know how that suspension works out for Austin Watson, if it resets at the break, whatever it is. We'll find out and let you guys know next episode. With that, though, before we jump into Saturday's game, let's hit a quick ad break. And when we come back, recap Saturday's game and then jump into some new segments on the show.
This NHL season has been as predictable as a puck rolling on its edge. No one knows where it's going, but that just means there's time for your favorite team to figure things out. And games left for you to get in the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. It's super easy for first-timers to get started. Try betting on something simple like picking a team to win. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app, select your team, and place your first bet. And if you're new to DraftKings, listen up. New customers bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/ice.
And welcome back. All right, let's dive into Saturday's game here. This one, it's a weird one. This is just, I don't know how to describe it. It was one that you kind of thought like, okay, we get the win Friday night. We're going to see the win Saturday night. Nick told me on Wednesday that we'd see the team go 1-2 over this week, and he was right, and I didn't want to let him be right, but here we are. You're welcome for giving you the acknowledgement that you were right on the show. You're welcome.
There's more that I was right on that I'm waiting for you to acknowledge.
I can't give you more than one right in the show. You know that.
But I thought they were going to lose the Friday game, though, to be honest, and then win the Saturday.
Did.
So because Iowa's better on Friday, which weird stat.
That is a weird stat. Anyways, so like we said, the Griffins ended up losing this one 3-2, unfortunately. Game starts off 14 minutes into the first period. Carter Mazur gets his third of the season, second since he's been back from injury. Great to see him starting to heat up here. That's exactly what the team needs. That goal assisted by William Bollender, so back-to-back nights with assists for Wally there. Love to see that. Sheldon Dry's got the secondary on that. Then the second period, all Iowa. They get 2 goals there. One of those being on the power play. Iowa, worst ranked power play in the American League, converts on back-to-back nights against our penalty kill. Not a stat you like to see at all. Going to the third period, 10 minutes in, Iowa adds another. Gets to the end of the game. Griffins pull the goalie. 30 seconds left in the game. Carter Mazur gets his second of the game, which great for him. Again, love to see him starting to get hot. His 4th of the season from Dom Shine and Nate Danielson. But they couldn't, squeak out another one in there. A ton of chances with the goalie pulled. I will say that. Grand Rapids had a ton of good chances there. But unfortunately, at the other end, Jesper Wallstedt, returning from injury, probably has his best game he's had all season. And that tends to be how the story goes when you have a team that's struggling. Someone usually pulls out their career best game or best game of the year, and it just happens to be Wallstedt in this game. And I will say he was fantastic. Grand Rapids peppered him with 35 shots in this one, and he handled them all very well. So looks like he's kind of back to feeling like his usual self. At the other end of the ice, you had Billy Husso there. He ends up facing 37 shots, stops 34. Overall, I thought he played a decent game. I'm not going to lie. I think Husso looked pretty good. He made some big saves when the team needed it, even though, we are on the losing end of this one. It just sucks that the Griffins couldn't find a way at the end there against Wallstedt because, again, it's just so many chances. But we also thought, you get a power play goal Friday night. Could we see the return of the power play Saturday night? Nope, goes 0 for 4. That's just sucks. That just really sucks. Like I said, Iowa was able to convert once. They had 5 power play opportunities in this game. When you say that, it sounds like this was one of those rough and tough games. Like we mentioned in the first half of the episode, Blatchman patrolling the red line in warm-ups in this game. You don't see that very often anymore. Let's be real. That does not happen very often unless the guy's going to go out there and really try to start something. But no real action like that in this one. He was trying to be a menace. There was some big hits, and he was trying to get the after-the-whistle stuff going. But again, Grand Rapids played their game and didn't give in to him, which I think frustrated him more and more as the night went on. But just overall, I don't think the Griffins played their worst hockey in this one. I think we've progressively seen since the back-to-back-to-back shutouts, the game in Milwaukee that Saturday where they lost by 1, we saw them get better. The Springfield game, they looked better. Friday, they get that win and looked even better. And I think they looked even better than Friday night in this game, other than some sloppy passes and a couple really bad shifts here where they were just a little lazy in those shifts. But overall, you can see them trending upwards, which is a real positive sign. It's a lot more positive tone for us to talk about the team than last week's episode. But I mean, Nick, what were your thoughts on this game? I know you were doing a lot of walleye coverage. I know the Canada-US game started in the middle of this one, and I'll be honest with you, my coverage on our page dissipated quickly once Canada-US took off, but we still posted as much as we could. But just what are your general thoughts on this one?
You put a kid in a candy store is what you did that night to me. I was all over the place. I started watching this as backup for us to post and clip. And kind of disappointed to me is like we kind of came out a little flat in the first 2 periods, just being outshot by so much. 7 in the first. Junior only had 7 shots. Iowa was 12, and then 8 shots in the second period. And the third period we come out and we put up 20. Like we put up 20
most of those were
period.
probably the last 5 minutes of the game. Let's be real.
Yeah, and it wasn't a penalty. It's not that we were getting a lot of shots on a penalty either, because in the third period it was only we only had 1 power play. I think the biggest thing, you and I and a lot of other people we've been talking to these last few weeks, is trying to figure out like what's going on, like how do we fix this, like what is the missing piece here. And again, I think his special teams is playing such a big part in this team, because the momentum, right? It's Iowa doesn't have a great power play, right? And if we could have shut them down, that brings momentum. If we get a power play goal, that brings momentum. I think maybe that's the part that's missing. But I thought overall this was going to be a sneaky, grind it out, try to get that win with this game that night for Saturday.
It definitely felt like it could be that way, and like one of those miraculous comebacks at the end of the game that we're so familiar with seeing this team pull off, and they just couldn't do it. And like I said, they tried their hardest. They were peppering Wallstead at the end of this game. 20 shots in that third period. You're definitely trying to find a way back into it, and it's just unfortunate that the bounces didn't go their way in this game. And that's just kind of how all the bounces seem to go during this stretch. I mean, some of the bounces that Iowa got in this game, you're like, how come we can't get one of those, just one, to go our way like that? And that's just kind of how the hockey gods bless your team sometimes. Sometimes you get the crazy bounces, and sometimes you sit here scratching your head wondering, how did that goalie just make back-to-back saves? But you said it. Let's talk special teams. Before we jump into our 3 stars of the weekend, let's talk special teams. It's been awful. Horrendous, to say the least, the Griffin special teams as of recently. Like, we've talked about it every season so far. The last 2 seasons, let's say. We've only done the show for 2.5 seasons. We talk about power play all last season being mid at best. This season, it started off really well and has just fallen off to the wayside big time. Like, a drop like this is pretty insane. And I just don't understand what the gap is, because as we've said to many of our friends that we talked to, friends of the show, just people we know when we're talking about this team, there's too much talent on this team for them not to be converting on these power plays. Like, there's no way. What are we missing here?
I mean, if you combine like we were doing in the beginning of the season, we're only at 98% with the penalty kill and the power play put together. So we're just under the 100. And in the beginning of the season, I believe we were about 103, I think, when everything was kind of rolling pretty good. The issue, and they've been mixing it up. The lineup, the power play units have been a little different here and there, but I think the biggest difference is it's just stagnant, right? Brandon, you and I talked about it, is getting that guy in the center, like kind of attacking more in towards the center of the ice, or like even using the bumpers to put it back towards the slot for high opportunity chance of putting it in. Like it's a better chance if you're going to be able to shoot it from the slot, that high danger area. they're not moving the puck. It's crazy because I've seen this through the offensive zone when they're not on their power play. It's just like moving the puck very fast, and the passes are very like spot on, right? Quick passes, quick short passes. They do it in the offensive zone. That's how they were being so successful. That's what you need to do on the power play, but you can't hesitate when that shot is available. And I think that's what's happening is that they're not taking the fast, quick passes where they're opening up the areas a little bit better for the defense. They're opening up that defense and then being able to take advantage of it when that opportunity is there. They hold on to the puck just a little bit too long at that point guy, if they're able to hold it in, which is something that you brought up quite a bit, Brandon, is not being able to hold it in on that blue line some of those times. But it's just there's no movement. There's no it's a lot of standing around. It's a lot of wait for the puck. And I mean, most people have watched the Four Nations this week and watched the power play. It's something I've been paying attention to because I'm like, what are we doing wrong? Like, is it just this? Is my idea just so crazy? Like, it's not. I'm not seeing it on other areas, but like those teams are attacking. They're cycling. They're moving the puck. They're moving bodies. It's creating the defense to figure out where that player is going and moving over to. It opens up the defense as much as you're moving bodies and puck will help open up spaces, and that's just what we really need to do. If it's down low, if it's on the side, if it's up at the top, it just has to happen. That's where we're lacking, I feel.
And like you said too, they've given it different looks. There's different lineups out there. We've seen them change it up. We've seen 2 defensemen instead of 1. We've seen it all change, but the thing that you don't see change is the scheme. Like, it's the same thing with different people. It's not the players at this point, I feel like. It's the scheme itself that we're drawing up. Like, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. Trav, you might have a different opinion. I know you want to jump into the lineup piece, but to put the same guys out there doing the same thing that the other guys are failing at, sure, one game, maybe those guys might be better. Let's see if it works. Okay, it didn't work. Well, let's just try it again the next night with different guys. And change the scheme. Get some movement. I feel like every week I'm begging for movement on this power play, and I'm starting to get sick of saying the same thing over again. Like, it's just so frustrating. But Travis, I'll throw it to you before I go on another rant.
So I've spent a lot of time driving the last few weeks.
Oh, we know.
And I've come to a kind of like just a realization, I guess you would say. This team is so young. I feel like they're almost asking too much of a lot of guys.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I looked at it really heavy today. Like, here's your first year. Basically, they're rookies, right? Gabriel Seeger, 13 points, 37 games. Hunter Johannes, 3 points, 29 games. Nate Danielson, 24 points, 47 games. Andre Becker, 8 points, 35 games. Shai Buium, 15 points, 44 games. I mean, the ones that stand out there are Buium and Danielson. First year pro North America, Rychlovsky, undrafted, 7 points, 36 games. Second year pro, first year AHL, Doucette, 16 points, 43 games. Like, there's so much youth that I can understand where they're going to struggle at times. There's a lot of, and I get, they got the veterans, but the veterans are doing their jobs. You look at who's leading this team in points, and I got it pulled up right here. Shine, Snively, Watson, Dries. Basically your core 4 veteran guys on this team are carrying this team. Danielson, he's in what would be 5th in points. Okay. Here's where I think this is where you really need more. You need more from Gettinger. They got to get Cross going somehow. These guys that have experience 2-3 years pro in the American League, maybe some guys longer than that with Gettinger. This is where I feel like this team, if you take into consideration that Mazur's missed a bunch of time, Ammo's missed a bunch of time, and you factor in Marco got called up, Elmer got called up, they just got depleted. And now it's all kids. And it's tough. It's tough. I mean, I get, you look at these guys too, like Buium, 2021 second round pick. Becker's a 3rd round pick. Danielson, 1st round pick. Seeger and Johannes, they're college free agents. Rayklowski was a overseas undrafted free agent. Doucette, undrafted free agent. So, and like, yeah, Doucette played in the Coast last year, but again, that's a big jump from the Coast to the American League. That's a huge jump. Rayklowski coming over, that's a huge adjustment period, and I just think when you factor in the call-ups and the injuries, you've got basically 5 guys at least from opening night that haven't been in the lineup for an extended period of time. That's a lot to put on the young players. And these kids got to grow up fast, and it's hard. And then you factor in that this is probably more of a grind of any season than they've ever played. You hit a wall, and I think they're just hitting that wall. So, I mean, yeah, we've, and this is just something that I thought, for us to kind of chat about, because every week we're always talking about the power play, this and that. And I'm like, you sit and you just think and think and think. And it's like, man, like there's 13 forwards on this team right now. And like almost half of them are first-year players in the American League.
Yeah.
So
that's kind of what I alluded to a couple of weeks ago, Trav, is like our depth just is not there. These guys are playing above, and I like how you bring it in. It's like, well, it's because these guys are so young, and like now you kind of make the focus. It's not the young guys' fault. It's not Becker, Rayklowski. It's not their fault at all. But you kind of shed the light on like Tim Gettinger. Where's he been? Like that's a player that he signed. The Red Wings have signed. And he should be putting up more points than what he really is. He's at 9 points for 30 games. That's not acceptable. I get he's on the third or fourth line, but there were times he was on the first and second. But he needs to be a guy that needs to step it up.
It's almost where, like, I you can only dress so many veterans, and what I read online today is it's 5. And this is where Waddy was so good in Toledo. He would get his 4 vets, and then he would get as many guys close to that 250 number as he could find. I feel like Detroit needed to get maybe 1 more guy, 2 more guys with experience, but not veteran status.
Yeah.
Like just to kind of, and, you don't really, it's a good problem as Red Wings fans that you have Elmer up, Marco up. That's a good thing. That's what you want. But then again, for us down here, it's kind of like, okay, well, that's great, but now we're struggling, and that's a big reason why, and we don't have a piece to plug there. You're asking a lot out of your young players to do that.
Well, and the other thing, too, is I've been calling is we need to have more offense from our defense, because that's really where I think you're going to close that gap, because we have more veterans on the D side than we do on the forward side. Like, this is 2-0's what, third year? Second year? Second or third. Vollander, this is his second year. Rafferty is a veteran. I don't know if he qualifies for veteran status, but he's been around the league for a while. Lageson's up in Detroit doing who knows what right now.
God.
And then you have Didier, Dello, and Vero, who also, like, Didier's been around the league for a while. He's not known for his goal scoring. Like, I'll give him that. But he can still provide offense. And this is Vero's third, and I would say final year with the organization. I would call it out. I mean, he's a -8 this year. I think he was a -7 last year. And then the year before that, he was a +5. And I know we don't count everything off of, sorry, he was a 5 last year and a -7 the year before.
Well, everyone was negative the year before.
Yeah.
Everyone. Literally the entire roster.
Even us. But
yeah,
the thing on it is he needs to put up some points. This year he's got 1 goal, 2 assists, 3 points. Last 2 years he has had 1 goal, 5 assists, 7 points. He's an aggressive player.
It's not really his role though to put points up.
Okay. But he's not really stopping them either.
You guys that are kind of supposed to do it are kind of doing it. At least 2-0 is. 2-0 is almost at half a point per game.
Yeah, no Tuomisto slander here. He's having a great season.
He is. And I think I just want to see him hone in that shot and put more goals up instead of the assists. And they could be tip-ins. I'll give him that. But like Vollander, he could activate a little bit more. Bouillon, there's no slander here because this is his rookie year.
I know. I'm saying that's a bright spot of the young kids is how well Bouillon's playing. Like, really, you have 3 guys that kind of have that offensive upside maybe on the decor that are young of the younger guys with 2-0 Wally and Booyam.
Yeah.
I mean, let's not forget when Wally was drafted, he was like a top U20 scoring player in the SHL as a defenseman. So, and again, it's these are still young kids. I get it's their second year, third year, but it can be tough. I get it.
I think a point to hit on too. I know this was something that Nick, you had done a lot of research on stats today was just lack of goal scoring overall. And like you talk about defensively, this team, even through this rough stretch, the Grand Rapids Griffins still have the 6th best goals against average in the American Hockey League. That right there, even through this stretch, is something insane. But then you go to the other side of things and you look at how many goals have we scored, and I got to scroll way down the list and see that we're 26th best in the league in goals scored. And
they could get to the teens.
I'm happy with that. That would be a huge milestone to get there. But we talk about, the special teams, right? We talk about that power play, and we talk about lack of offense. And I said this to you today, Nick, this all comes back to one person, and I'm not going to blame the players. And I feel like that's the right way to go about this. It's the coach that's in charge of that aspect of the team. And that is your assistant coach, Steph Julian. He runs the power play and spends a ton of time with the offense. And we're looking at guys over these past 2 years, even just kind of comparing numbers. And you look at the year prior and Ben Simon's last year as head coach, and you look at a guy like Joel Esperance, right? Produced as a veteran player, produced in huge numbers. You go into the second year, new coaching staff, right? And that's always a hard change for everyone. But you just look at the results, and they kind of speak for themselves. When you look at Joel's last season in Texas before he came to Grand Rapids, 49 points in 62 games. His next season, his first year in Grand Rapids, 49 points in 72 games. Last season, under the new coaching regime, 28 points in 59 games. That's just a one-off there. And you take a guy, Matt Luff is even an example. We talked about him in this show. Look at what he did last season. Yes, there was an injury there. But when he even came back in, he wasn't Matt Luff that we expected and were used to. And you look at his season before in Grand Rapids, he only had 28 games, 25 points. His last season with us, 18 points, 26 games, 32 points in 34 games now with Springfield. Insane season for him. But you're talking about veteran scoring, and yes, some of the guys are doing it, but are they doing it enough? And are we getting enough offense? I say no, and it all tracks back to one person that, for some reason, the biggest outliers in this team are what we talk about constantly when this team is struggling. And that's my biggest question is, what is Steph doing or not doing? That's going to change this. I hate to put the blame on one person, but at some point you got to go, what's the coach doing? And you look at Detroit, they did that, and look what they're doing. I'm asking questions now, and I hate to be that guy that says it, but I'm asking those questions. What's Steph Julian doing to improve this team? Because right now, I feel like he's just putting different guys in different spots, running the exact same plays night in, night out, hoping for a different result. And we're not getting it. You got to change it up.
It's odd because I was going through all those stats today. I was sharing them all to you guys, and I'm just like, what? There's something off. There's something there. Something's not making sense. Where is it? Is it on the offensive side? Is it on the defensive side? Is that power, special teams? Obviously, special teams is a big thing we've talked about for the last two years now. That it just hasn't clicked. It just hasn't. It will for 3 games, and then it goes back to zero. I don't think I've ever seen it in this bad of a stretch. So I'm looking even at shots. Are we putting up enough shots? Because we've been outshot for most of the season as well. And we're still, I looked at Calgary, who has the most goals for in the entire league. And we're even out shooting them by 156 shots for the year. And we're literally not getting the goals. So the next thing I have to look at now is shot charts for every team in the entire league. No, I'm kidding. I'm not going to get that crazy. My attention span won't last that long. But now I think that's kind of what we have to look at is because we have the talent on this team. Especially when Ammo comes back, we have the talent on this team to be able to do the things we need to do. maybe we're just not shooting high quality shots at this point. And I don't think there's a website or a stats website. If there is, please put it in the comments. I will pay money for this to see it. I know there are in the NHL, but there's something off, and I don't think it's great goaltending every night, to be honest.
No, and again, defensively and goaltending has kind of saved the team at this point. We'd be in a much worse stretch if we didn't have what we have back on that end of the spectrum. But at the same time, you're right. And you look at the shots too. We miss a lot of nets. We hit a lot of crossbars. Those are shots that aren't even counting. But you're talking about how many shots we are getting off per game and the low danger of them. Yeah, we're putting them right in the goalie's chest half the time. Or we rack up shots in these crazy scrambles at the end of these games that we're trying to get back in, and you get 3, 4, 5 shots in a row right there, and here we are. But we're shooting the puck, apparently. How is it not finding the back of the net? And I don't know, you could go on for hours and just go scratch your head. I just want to see offense from this team. Right. I just want to see offense. That's all I want to see. And we have the players with the ability to do it. These guys can put up goals in big numbers. They all have done it in their careers so far. We know they can do it. Yes, it's been in different leagues and different teams, sure. They all have the capability to do it. Draw up some new plays, some new schemes. Come at it at a different angle and just try something. Because when we have these games where all of a sudden we see new things, you see those crisp tape-to-tape passes, those quick passes, we're like, this team's vibing different tonight. Something's different. And the result usually ends in a W. And now we're seeing all this, and we're not seeing those W's.
I missed the 5-2 games, the 4-2, 6-2. Like, I missed those games, and it doesn't need to be that high scoring all the time. But
no, not with the goaltending we have. Are you kidding me?
No,
you can put up 3 goals in a lot of these games and win them.
As I say,
You just got to get past that.
3.
Yeah, I would like to see like 3-0 games, to be honest with you. That's kind of more the style, but that's what we saw in the beginning of the season was 6-2, 5-2, 4-2. Like, we saw a lot of those games, and like it was crazy. And the reason I know that is because we were doing Sound the Horn, and it was like 4 points here, 4 points here. Oh, Costa's winning, team's winning. Like, all these points are getting handed out. It was pretty much a solid bet to go for either the team that night or the goalie. Like, you're getting points. So and now it's pretty much anybody's game.
I mean, what do you just hope to see in this next few games coming up? Because we have 3 games, and if you look at them by division, they should be winnable games. We have Iowa coming back into town on Sunday. Then we've got Friday and this Wednesday, which is just tomorrow from us recording this, with Lehigh Valley coming to Grand Rapids for the first time ever, which usually those games are a lot more fun because we finally get to see different teams that aren't just the Rockford IceHogs, Chicago Wolves, and Milwaukee Admirals. Like, I feel like we just see them so much. So seeing a new team come to town is exciting. But what do you just hope to see when you're sitting there watching those games this weekend?
Wins.
Well, obviously,
Dubs.
outside of that.
Like, that's what you guys always say is dubs. We don't care about the shots. We don't care about this or that. We want dubs. I mean, honestly, what I'm hoping to see is my favorite player back out there, lighting up the scoreboard.
I hope so too, buddy. We hope to see him return.
I'm
Do you
hoping
need
him
me to come up there?
I'm hoping
Nick
him
just needs a hug, it sounds like, now after that one. That was sounded desperate.
No, the only reason I ask is because I've been to 2 games this year. Well, 2 games up there, and they scored 9 goals in those 2 games when I came.
Yeah, one of them was a freaking barn burner. Good God.
And then the one down here, it was 0-0 to a shootout, and Joe Snively scored the only goal.
That's also true. Here's what I hope to see. I hope to see the team that we've seen these past 2 games where you're seeing things build up in the right direction. But I'm hoping to see some creativity when it comes to the special teams. If that first power play Wednesday night and they're just standing there again, I'm gonna lose my mind. Like, they've had some days off and days at practice to work on some stuff. Aside from all the negative, we were going to introduce a couple new segments. There's about only time to introduce one, and that's just the 3 stars of the week. We record on a week-by-week basis for this team. Let's talk about the stars of these past 3 games, and the first star obviously has to be Carter Mazur. His 2-goal performance on Saturday, he's feeling good. He's doing the right things, and it's just good to see Carter getting back to his Carter self that we expected, and honestly, he's doing it quicker than the last time he was out with an injury.
Yeah, I picked him for Saturday's game, and he rewards me with 2 goals. So I was pretty stoked with his return. I was the only one picking up points that night, and you saw two different styles of those goals. So one was a tip. He was out in front of the net, tipped a shot from Volender, and then the second one he sniped it. I mean, it was another great goal right there. He's come back extremely fast. Not fast, but he's back up on the score sheet quite, I want to say quite fast. Which is good.
I would say fast. It's faster than we've seen him before when he's injured. I'm happy with that.
11 games back, he has 3 goals and 4 assists.
Yeah. I mean, again, we saw what he came back with injury last season and what he did going into the playoffs, especially. And it took him a little while to get going, but once he got going, it was great. Now to see him just get going like this now, I'm assuming we'll see consistent production from him, which is great to see. That's exactly what this team needed to see with him coming back, and it's the boost we anticipated with this, what he would bring to the lineup.
And he's slotting into where Elmer was, and he's putting up more points than Elmer. So that, I mean, that's, you're not really you're losing the physicality and the strength and like the size, but you're gaining the points and the production with Mazur.
I wouldn't say you lose the physicality. I still think he brings that to the table. You lose the size for sure. Sorry, Carter.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he was like a possible bubble guy to
He was.
the NHL games this year, and he scored opening night, and he was off to a good start, and then he gets hurt. So the biggest thing with him, I think, is just, he's a .62 point per game right now, and if you can just kind of keep him going, I think that's the key here. And then you'll get possibly ammo back soon, so that adds some offense. Those are two big pieces for this team that they desperately needed. And when they've both been on the ice, they've been really good. So I just think with Mazur, it's great to see him back and healthy, but producing.
Yeah, I agree. Our second star for the weekend, it's got to be Joe Snively. Sure, he didn't have a point Wednesday or Saturday, but 3 points in Friday's win. Like, kind of put the team on his back when he needed to there to come out with that W. 2 goals, 1 assist in those 3 games, or that game, sorry. And just honestly, when Nick pointed it out, he had like a point streak going for road games, which was crazy. It's just a weird stat of the day from Nick there. But honestly, when you need a veteran to step up and produce at times where we need it the most, Joe has been that guy pretty much consistently all season long. And we were high on him when we signed him, and he just continues to deliver. I just wish it could be more consistent basis. Obviously, like, you want that from every player, right? But when we need it most, he's usually there to pick us up in some way.
Yeah, he's got it's a 6-game, well, he had a 6-game goal streak on the road. So I was happy that you took him, but I was also pissed that you took him for sound the horn on Friday.
I took your advice on that one.
I know, but you didn't know the stat before I had shared it. So I was really hoping he was going to get the Hattie, to be honest with you. And I thought he did. I thought he had gotten the overtime goal, but Sheldon Dries had snagged it. But I mean, Snively, when he's hot, and he's doing exactly what we wanted, coming in, he breaks the power play streak as well in the third in that game, and to tie it as well. I mean, so that was pretty big piece there. So
yeah. And then the third star of the week, I'm going to pivot on you guys and change it from the one we said. I'm sorry, but it's got to go to Hunter. It's got to go to Hunter Johannes. Assist in the game in Springfield on Wednesday, his first AHL goal on Friday. And as we've said lately, he's playing some of his best hockey we've seen him as a Griffin so far since he's returned from Toledo. Yes, he's playing that fourth line role, but he is a big key piece of that fourth line between him, Seeger, and Hannes. Like, he's just playing unreal hockey, physical, great on the forecheck, been great defensively, and 2 points in 3 games for him. That's kind of unheard of so far this season, especially when you look at it going into Wednesday's game. He had 1 point on the season. He's doubled his points already in just these 3 games over this past week. So I had to give the third star to Hunter.
Who was
Rightfully so.
Who was it supposed to be?
Sheldon Dries was also in there. He had 2 points this weekend, so he can have the honorable mention this week.
Yeah.
But I was just re-going through the game notes, and I'm like, it's got to go to Hunter, especially getting his first. He gets the boost for that first point or the first goal, but at the same time, doubling your points in the season in those games, again, when the team needed scoring, especially with the way the fourth line's been playing, you got to get it from somewhere. It came from them again, and yeah, he gets that third star of the week, 100%.
And it was a nice shot too.
It really was.
It was kind of an awkward angle. Just slips right through the goalie's pads, 5-hole. I mean, it was I was waiting for him to be more of like a dirty goal of something hit him or
right,
hits off of him, goes in. But no, he shoots this from almost the blue line or the red line by the goal area.
Yeah, it was kind of like on the far side of the face-off circle. It's, if you're a Toledo fan listening, and Travis, you can relate to this, it's one of those weird goals that Cruz randomly shoots from that spot and it goes in.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it was, and you're like, oh, maybe he'll start shooting from there more. And again, for a first goal in the American League, you don't want it to be one of those weird, like it bounces off his butt and goes in. Like you want to have a highlight, at least that you have a shot, and he gets that. So third star of the week to Hunter Johannes. So
his celebration was fantastic too. The Iowa people were giving it to him, and he's just like, he's yelling something back, chirping him back. But
yeah, Bob clarified the next night. It sounded like they were making some gestures towards the Griffins that were not favorable at all. And Hunter was just in their face through the glass, just big old woos right in their face. And that, again, that's the vibe you want when your team's going through a struggle. When you see bits and pieces like that, you're like, okay, the vibe around the guys is still good. There's still that positive energy there. And that's what fans get so concerned about when you go through these ruts. And to see a few guys over these past few games remind us that it's okay, it helps calm the panic button on my end. And I know Nick broke his a while ago, so at least his is broken. So we're good there.
Still broke.
Yep. But that's all I've got for this week's Griffin Show, boys. I know we have nothing else to add for this one. So thank you all for tuning in. And as always, we got to thank our sponsors of the show, of course, DraftKings and Everything Hockey Clothing Company. Make sure you head over to everythinghockey.com. Use code WEST to save a few bucks on your order and support the show. We appreciate it. And check out all their stuff. They keep dropping stuff. Every week I refresh their feed. There's something new there. So make sure you're checking it out and seeing what's new over there. But of course, with our Patreon subscribers, the show would not be possible. And we've got to thank them. And those currently are...
We've got Claire Boughton, Randy Zick, Michael Alsante, Lori Foch, John in Florida, Griffin, Elaine Grace, Derek Sleazer, and Alan Foch.
You got his last name right. Good job.
I had to try really hard.
He did too. You saw the pause there. He had to try hard on that one. But thank you all for subscribing. And if you want to join them in supporting the show, head over to patreon.com/Hockeytown West podcast. Check out the tiers we have there. We post unedited episodes there, exclusive stuff. We try to post a heads up on interviews that are coming up. We tell patrons first before anyone else. And of course, drop behind the scenes stuff and any other fun stuff we can think of for you guys there. But with that, we'll wrap this one up. Thank you all for tuning in again. And as always, go Griffins, go Walleye.
Love you. Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to the Hockeytown West podcast. Be sure to check us out on Twitter at HockeytownWPod and your host, Nick at GR Hockey Guy and Brandon at BrandonGR Hockey.